Do you, Lucy Sterling, take Brandon Pierce to be your lawfully wedded husband? My granddaughter opened her mouth to say, I do, her face glowing with happiness. That's when I watched police officers walk down the aisle of her wedding. Lucy turned to stare at me, her wedding dress rustling, her face transforming from joy to confusion to something I'd never seen before. Grandma, what did you do? Everyone wants to know how a 74-year-old grandmother ended up destroying her granddaughter's perfect wedding day. The truth is more complicated than anyone could imagine. Before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and subscribe to Never Too Old channel. We're creating a community of incredible people who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now, back to the story. My granddaughter Lucy has always been the light of my life. At 74, I've buried a husband and a daughter, but Lucy keeps me going. She's been mine to raise since she was 10 years old, when cancer took my Sarah and Lucy's father decided single parenting wasn't for him. Lucy doesn't remember much about her mother. Sarah's laugh, the way she sang off-key in the shower, how she made pancakes shaped like butterflies. But she remembers being left behind. That wound never quite healed, making her cling to anyone who shows her real attention. Which brings me to Brandon Pierce. I met him 6 months ago when Lucy brought him to Sunday dinner. Handsome in that generic way that photographs well, with a firm handshake and the kind of smile that makes you want to check your pockets afterward. He worked as a junior investment banker, drove a leased BMW, and had an opinion about everything. Mrs. Sterling, he said, cutting his roast beef with surgical precision. Lucy tells me you were quite the businesswoman in your day. In my day. As if I'd been put out to pasture. I did well enough, I replied, watching him calculate something behind his eyes. Lucy beamed at him like he'd just solved world hunger. Grandma built Sterling Financial from nothing. She managed portfolios for half the wealthy families in the city. Brandon's interest sharpened. Fascinating. The financial world has changed so much. I'd love to hear your thoughts on modern investment strategies sometime. Red flags were already waving, but Lucy looked so happy. After years of watching her struggle with trust, seeing her finally open up to someone felt like a small miracle. So I smiled and refilled his wine glass. The engagement happened fast. 3 months of whirlwind romance, and suddenly Lucy was calling me in tears of joy because Brandon had proposed at that expensive restaurant downtown. The ring was modest but tasteful. Brandon claimed he'd wanted to buy something bigger, but he was being fiscally responsible. He's so thoughtful, Grandma, Lucy gushed over the phone. He says we should save money for our future instead of spending it all on a ring. Thoughtful or cheap? But I kept my mouth shut. The wedding planning consumed the next 3 months. Lucy threw herself into every detail with the desperate enthusiasm of someone who'd never expected to get married at all. She chose a small church in downtown, booked the Riverside Country Club for the reception, and obsessed over flower arrangements like they were peace treaties. Brandon remained charming throughout. He deferred to Lucy's choices, praised my cooking when he came for dinner, and even helped me reach something from a high shelf once, commenting that I should be more careful at my age. At my age. Strike two. But he made Lucy laugh. He remembered to bring her coffee in the morning and held her hand during movies. When she talked about their future together, her voice carried a lightness I hadn't heard since she was a child. How could I question that happiness, even if something about him made my skin crawl? 1 week before the wedding, I stopped questioning. That's when I discovered exactly who Brandon Pierce really was. I hadn't planned to go to the Marriott Hotel that Tuesday night. Lucy had called me around 6, panicked because she'd forgotten to give Brandon his grandfather's watch, some family heirloom his mother insisted he wear during the ceremony. The poor girl was already stressed about final wedding details, so I volunteered to drop it off. Brandon was having his bachelor party in one of the hotel's private rooms. Nothing too wild, Lucy had assured me. Just him and a few close friends from work, including his business partner Nathan Reed. The hotel staff knew me well enough. I'd hosted several charity events there over the years. Back when Sterling Financial sponsored half the fundraisers in the city, The concierge directed me to the private dining area on the third floor without question. I took the elevator up, clutching the small velvet box containing the watch. The hallway was quiet, muffled sounds of laughter drifting from behind a partially closed door. I approached, ready to knock, when I heard Brandon's voice clearly through the gap. "Come on, Nathan. You should see the old lady's house. Fresh flowers every week, original artwork on the walls, and that's just what's visible. Lucy mentioned her grandmother's got investment portfolios worth millions." I froze. Nathan's voice responded, "Are you sure she'll go for it? Some of these wealthy widows are pretty sharp about their money." Brandon laughed, and the sound made my blood run cold. "That's the beauty of it. I'm not going after her directly. Lucy's the key. After we're married, I'll start working on her. Family emergencies, investment opportunities, you know the drill. Lucy trusts me completely, and she'd do anything to help her new husband succeed." "What about the business documents?" Another voice I didn't recognize chimed in. "Already prepared," Nathan replied. "The coastal development project looks completely legitimate on paper. We've got fake prospectuses, forged references, even a temporary office space rented downtown. The old woman will never know what hit her." My hand clenched around the watch box so hard I thought I might crush it. "And if Lucy gets suspicious?" the unknown voice asked. Brandon's response was casual, like discussing the weather. "Lucy won't be a problem. She's desperate for approval, especially from father figures. Her father left when she was 10. Poor thing latches onto anyone who shows her attention." The laughter that followed made my stomach turn. They were talking about my granddaughter like she was a mark in some elaborate con game. "Besides," Brandon continued, "once I get access to Sterling's money, Lucy becomes dispensable. I'll give the marriage 2 years, maybe 3 if she's useful. Then I'll find some reason to divorce her. By then, her grandmother's investments will be long gone, and Lucy will be too humiliated to press charges." "What about the old woman herself?" Nathan asked. "Heart problems run in families," Brandon said, his voice taking on a sinister edge, "especially in old ladies under financial stress. Sometimes these things resolve themselves naturally." I backed away from the door, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might give me away. The velvet box slipped from my trembling fingers and hit the carpeted floor with a soft thud. Heart problems, financial stress. These monsters weren't just planning to steal my money, they were counting on the shock to kill me. I bent to retrieve the watch box, my mind racing. Brandon wasn't just a fortune hunter. He was part of an organized scheme, complete with fake businesses and forged documents. And Lucy, my sweet, trusting Lucy, was nothing more than a pathway to my bank accounts. The voices inside the room grew louder as someone moved closer to the door. I straightened quickly and walked as calmly as possible toward the elevator, my legs feeling like they might give out at any moment. In the elevator, I stared at my reflection in the polished metal doors. A 74-year-old woman looked back at me, but I felt ancient. How had I missed this? How had I let this predator get so close to Lucy? Back in my car, I sat in the hotel parking lot for 20 minutes, trying to process what I'd heard. Brandon wasn't just after my money. He was planning Lucy's destruction too, and from the casual way they'd discussed it, this wasn't their first time running this particular con. I drove home slowly, my mind already working on the problem. I had 7 days before the wedding. 7 days to save my granddaughter from a man who saw her as nothing more than a useful tool. The hardest part would be convincing Lucy. She was so in love, so desperate to finally have someone choose her, that the truth would devastate her. But I had to try. I owed her that much. I called Lucy the next morning and asked her to come for lunch. Nothing unusual. We'd been meeting regularly to discuss last-minute wedding details, but this time, I had a manila folder waiting on my kitchen table, filled with everything I'd managed to dig up overnight. Lucy arrived at noon, practically glowing with excitement. She kissed my cheek and immediately launched into chatter about the florist confirming the delivery time and how Brandon's suit fitting had gone perfectly. "Grandma, you should have seen him in that tux. He looked like something out of a magazine." She paused, studying my face. "You look tired. Are you feeling okay?" I poured her coffee and sat down across from her. Lucy, we need to talk about Brandon. Her smile faltered slightly. What about him? I opened the folder and pulled out the first document, a printout of the Coastal Development Company's registration. Tell me, honey, has Brandon mentioned any business investments lately? Well, yes, actually. Lucy's voice grew animated again. He has this amazing opportunity with a development project. He thinks you might be interested in investing. He's been so excited about it. My heart sank. He was already laying the groundwork. Lucy, sweetheart, I need you to look at something. I slid the document across the table. This company was incorporated 3 weeks ago. The address listed is a temporary office space that can be rented by the day. She picked up the paper, frowning. I don't understand. What does this mean? It means the company doesn't really exist. It's a shell corporation designed to steal money from investors. The color drained from Lucy's face. That's impossible. Brandon wouldn't be involved in anything like that. I pulled out more papers. Screenshots of Nathan Reed's arrest record from 2 years ago, articles about similar investment scams in other cities, evidence of the fake office rental. With each document, Lucy grew paler. Grandma, stop! Her voice was sharp now. This is ridiculous. You're trying to sabotage my wedding because you can't stand the thought of me leaving you. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. Lucy, that's not— It is. She stood up abruptly, knocking over her coffee cup. The dark liquid spread across the table, soaking the papers. You've been alone for so long that you can't imagine me having my own life. You're making up stories because you're terrified of being abandoned again. I heard him, Lucy. My voice came out as a whisper. Last night at the hotel, I heard Brandon talking to his friends about how he's going to use you to get to my money. Lucy's laugh was bitter. You heard what you wanted to hear. Brandon loves me. He proposed to me, not to your bank account. I tried to salvage the wet documents, my hands shaking. Sweetheart, please listen. No, you listen. Lucy's voice cracked. My whole life, everyone has left me. My father walked out when Mom died because I was too much trouble. But Brandon chose me. He wants to build a life with me, and you can't stand that someone finally picked me over you. Tears were streaming down her face now, and I felt my own eyes burning. This was exactly what I'd feared, that she'd see my protection as jealousy. Lucy, I raised you. I love you more than my own life. Why would I make this up? Because you're old and scared and selfish. The words came out like bullets. You lost your husband, you lost your daughter, and now you're losing me. So you're trying to destroy the one good thing in my life rather than face being alone. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. I followed her, desperate. Just, please be careful, Lucy. Please pay attention to what he says and does. She turned back, her face red and streaked with tears. You know what, Grandma? Maybe it's time you started making some friends your own age instead of clinging to me like I'm your emotional support animal. The door slammed behind her, rattling the windows. I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by coffee-soaked evidence, feeling more alone than I had since my husband died. But I wasn't giving up. Lucy thought I was a paranoid old woman afraid of abandonment. Let her think that. I had 6 days to save my granddaughter from the biggest mistake of her life. And if she wouldn't listen to my words, she'd have to see the truth for herself. The next 5 days were a nightmare of dead ends and false hopes. Lucy didn't call, didn't text, didn't stop by. Every minute of silence felt like another step toward disaster. I spent Wednesday night on my computer, printing everything I could find about Coastal Development Company. Thursday morning, I called my accountant, James Rodriguez. I need you to look into this company, I told him. Tell me everything you can find. What am I looking for? Whether it's real or fake. James called back that afternoon. Vivian, this company is paper thin. Incorporated 3 weeks ago, temporary mailing address, no assets I can trace, but that's not illegal. Plenty of startups look like this. Not illegal. Not enough. Thursday evening, I drove past the address listed for Coastal Development. Just as I suspected, a small office building that rented space by the day. I sat in my car for an hour hoping to see Nathan or Brandon, but nothing. Friday morning, I swallowed my pride and called Detective Ray Thompson. We'd known each other for 15 years through the charity circuit. His daughter had been one of my clients. Ray, I need help. I think my granddaughter is marrying a con artist. What kind of evidence do you have? I told him everything, the overheard conversation, the fake company, Nathan's background. Ray listened patiently, but when I finished, he sighed. Vivian, I believe you. But believing and proving are different things. Incorporating a shell company isn't a crime if you haven't used it to defraud anyone yet. And overhead conversations aren't admissible evidence. So you can't arrest him? Not without proof of an actual crime. Do you have bank records showing stolen money? Forged documents? Victims willing to testify? I didn't. I had suspicions and circumstantial evidence, but nothing concrete. Friday evening, I hired a private investigator. Maybe a professional could find what I couldn't, but when she called Saturday morning, her news wasn't helpful. Mrs. Sterling, your instincts are probably right. This Brandon Pierce has all the hallmarks of a grifter, but he's careful. I can't find any criminal record, no history of arrests. If he's done this before, he's never been caught. Saturday afternoon, less than 24 hours before the wedding, I sat in my kitchen staring at the phone. I had one last idea, a desperate shot that probably wouldn't work. I called Lucy. It went straight to voicemail. Lucy, sweetheart, it's Grandma. I know you're angry with me, but please, just ask Brandon one question. Ask him to show you proof that Coastal Development has actual projects, real contracts, real permits, real clients. If I'm wrong, I'll apologize to both of you at your wedding. If I'm right, please, just ask him. She didn't call back. Sunday morning, I sat in my empty house, staring at the mother of the bride dress hanging in my closet. In 4 hours, Lucy would walk down the aisle to marry a man who planned to destroy her life, and I had failed to stop it. I'd tried everything I could think of. Detective Thompson needed evidence I couldn't provide. The private investigator found nothing actionable. Lucy wouldn't listen to me. Brandon was too smart to leave obvious tracks. Maybe I was wrong? Maybe I was just a paranoid old woman who couldn't accept that her granddaughter was moving on with her life? Maybe Brandon really did love Lucy, and the conversation I'd overheard was just what? Boys being boys? Cold feet before a wedding? But even as I tried to convince myself, I knew the truth. Brandon Pierce was a predator, and Lucy was walking into his trap, and I was powerless to save her. I picked up my coffee cup with shaking hands and wondered if this was how it felt to fail at the most important thing you'd ever tried to do. At 10:30 that morning, 2 hours before the ceremony, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer it. Mrs. Sterling? My name is Carol Williams. I saw the wedding announcement in yesterday's paper, and I had to call you. I'm sorry. Do I know you? No, but I know Brandon Pierce. Her voice was shaky, angry. He destroyed my family 2 years ago. My heart stopped. What do you mean? He did the same thing to us. My daughter Amanda was dating him, brought him home for Christmas. Charming, successful, everything a mother could want for her child. Then he started talking about this amazing investment opportunity, some construction company that was about to go public. The coffee cup slipped from my hands and shattered on the kitchen floor. Coastal Development. No, it was called Pacific Holdings back then. Fake company, forged documents, promises of huge returns, the whole thing. My husband and I invested our entire retirement fund, $400,000. What happened? Carol's voice broke. Brandon disappeared 3 days after we wrote the check. Amanda was devastated. She'd been so sure he loved her. We found out later his real name was Brandon Pierce, not Brian Palmer like he told Amanda. Did you go to the police? Of course, but he'd covered his tracks too well. The company was dissolved, the office was empty, the bank account was closed, our money was gone, transferred offshore somewhere we couldn't touch it. I sank into a kitchen chair, my legs giving out. Why didn't you press charges? We tried, but the detective said it would be nearly impossible to prove fraud without catching him in the act. And Amanda, she was so humiliated, so broken. She begged us not to pursue it. She just wanted to forget the whole thing ever happened. Is Amanda okay now? There was a long pause. She moved across the country, changed her name. She still won't talk about what happened. The doctors say she may never fully trust anyone again. Amanda. Another Lucy, destroyed by Brandon's manipulation. Mrs. Sterling, are you still there? Yes, I whispered. Yes, I'm here. My sister lives in your area. She saw the wedding announcement and thought the bride looked like Amanda, so she sent it to me as a coincidence. When I saw his picture, I recognized him immediately. Same face as the man who destroyed my family, but now I finally knew his real name. I couldn't stay silent. I kept everything from when it happened, the fake documents, the bank transfers, all of it. The police said it wasn't enough to prosecute since he'd disappeared and we couldn't prove intent to defraud. But maybe with a new victim, they'll finally listen. Will you testify? Will you give that evidence to the police? Yes, absolutely. That monster has stolen enough from enough families. My hands were shaking as I called Detective Ray Thompson. Ray, I have a victim. Brandon Pierce defrauded a family in Oregon 2 years ago. She has documentation, she'll testify. That changes everything. If we can prove a pattern of fraud, we can arrest him. How soon can you get me that evidence? She's driving down from Portland right now with the documents. Should be here in about an hour. Good, I'll get a warrant started. Where's the wedding? St. Mary's Church on 5th Street. Ceremony starts at 12:30. We'll be there. I'll have officers stationed outside, and we'll move in when I give the signal. But as I hung up the phone, I realized the hardest part was still coming. Lucy was about to have her wedding day destroyed in front of everyone she knew. She was going to hate me for this, at least at first, but she'd be alive to hate me. And someday, maybe she'd understand that sometimes love means making the hardest choices, even when they break your heart. I picked up the pieces of my broken coffee cup, my hands still shaking. At 11:30, I was pacing my living room when the doorbell rang. Carol Williams stood on my porch, a thick manila envelope in her hands and determination in her eyes. Mrs. Sterling? I'm Carol. I made good time. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 55, with graying hair and the kind of tired eyes that come from carrying too much pain. We sat at my kitchen table while she spread out documents. Bank statements, printed emails, photographs of Amanda with the man I knew as Brandon Pierce. This is him with my daughter at Christmas dinner 2 years ago, Carol said, pointing to a photo. Brandon looked exactly the same, that charming smile, those calculating eyes. He told us he was an investment banker, just like he told your granddaughter. The similarity was chilling. Same profession, same charm, probably even some of the same lines. The emails are the worst part, Carol continued, pulling out printed pages. Look how he manipulated her. Amanda, you're so much smarter than other girls your age. Your parents are lucky to have raised such a thoughtful daughter. I can see why they trust your judgment about investments. My stomach turned. Those weren't love letters. They were calculated moves in a chess game. Mrs. Sterling, I need to warn you. When this happens, when he gets arrested, your granddaughter is going to be devastated. Not just embarrassed, destroyed. Amanda still hasn't recovered. I know, I said quietly. But what's the alternative? Let him destroy her slowly over the next few years? Carol nodded grimly. You're doing the right thing. I just wish someone had been able to save Amanda the way you're saving Lucy. At 12:15, my phone rang. Detective Thompson. We're in position. 3 units outside the church. 2 detectives inside posing as guests. The arrest will happen during the ceremony. Understood, I said. We should both go, Carol said firmly. Lucy needs to see that you were there because you love her, not because you wanted to destroy her happiness. She was right. As much as it would kill me to watch, Lucy needed to see that I was there because I loved her, not because I wanted to hurt her. Ray will need your testimony right after the arrest, I told Carol. The drive to St. Mary's Church felt like a funeral procession. Carol followed in her rental car while I gripped my steering wheel and tried not to think about the look that would be on Lucy's face when the police walked down that aisle. The church parking lot was full. I could see Detective Thompson's unmarked car and two officers I recognized trying to look casual near the entrance. Everything appeared normal on the surface, but I could feel the tension crackling in the air. Inside, the church was beautiful. Lucy had chosen white roses and baby's breath, and the late morning sun was streaming through the stained glass windows in jeweled patterns. Under different circumstances, it would have been perfect. I slipped into a pew in the back, Carol beside me. Up front, I could see Brandon at the altar, handsome in his black tuxedo, chatting with Nathan Reed, who was serving as his best man. They looked so relaxed, so confident. They had no idea their world was about to explode. The wedding march began, and Lucy appeared at the back of the church. She looked radiant in her grandmother's vintage dress, her face glowing with happiness. This was supposed to be the best day of her life. I had to clench my fists to keep from crying. Lucy walked down the aisle slowly, savoring every moment. When she reached Brandon, he took her hands and whispered something that made her smile. The officiant, Father Martinez, opened his book and began the ceremony. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." I kept glancing at Detective Thompson, who was sitting 3 rows ahead of me, dressed in a dark suit and trying to look like someone's uncle. He had his phone in his hand, waiting for the signal from Carol's testimony to be processed. The ceremony proceeded normally for 20 minutes. Father Martinez spoke about love and commitment while I sat in agony, watching my granddaughter promise her life to a man who was planning to destroy it. "Do you, Brandon Pierce, take Lucy Sterling to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." Brandon's voice rang out clear and confident. "And do you, Lucy Sterling, take Brandon Pierce to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Lucy opened her mouth to respond, her face radiant with joy. That's when Detective Thompson's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then stood up slowly. "Excuse me, Father Martinez. Police. I need to stop this ceremony." The church went dead silent. Lucy's face went from joy to confusion to horror in the space of 3 seconds. "Brandon Pierce," Detective Thompson continued, walking toward the altar, "you're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit grand larceny." Brandon's face went white, then red. "This is ridiculous. This is my wedding day. You can't just—" "Step away from the bride, sir." That's when Brandon saw me in the back pew. His eyes locked on mine, and I saw the exact moment he realized I was behind this. The charm fell away completely, and for the first time I saw the real Brandon Pierce, cold, calculating, and absolutely furious. "You," he snarled, pointing at me. "You bitter old witch. You couldn't stand to see Lucy happy." Lucy turned to look at me, her face a mask of shock and betrayal. "Grandma, what's happening? What did you do?" 2 more officers appeared from side doors. Nathan Reed tried to make a run for it but was tackled before he reached the vestibule. Brandon submitted to the handcuffs, but his eyes never left mine. "Lucy," he called as they led him away. "Don't believe her lies. I love you. This is all a mistake." But Lucy wasn't looking at him anymore. She was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Complete and utter devastation. As the officers escorted Brandon and Nathan out of the church, the wedding guests sat in stunned silence. Some were taking pictures with their phones, others were whispering frantically to each other. The flowers, the music, the stained glass, it all remained beautiful, but the dream was shattered. Carol squeezed my hand. "You did the right thing," she whispered. But looking at Lucy's face, standing alone at the altar in her wedding dress, I wondered if doing the right thing was worth the price we'd both have to pay. The church emptied quickly after the arrest. Wedding guests filed out in stunned silence, some stopping to whisper condolences to Lucy, others simply fleeing the awkwardness. Within 20 minutes, only a handful of people remained. Lucy, myself, Carol, and Father Martinez, who was quietly packing up his ceremonial items. Lucy sat in the front pew, still in her wedding dress, staring at nothing. She hadn't spoken since the police led Brandon away. Her bouquet lay forgotten on the floor where she dropped it. Carol approached Lucy first, sitting down beside her on the pew. Lucy, I'm Carol Williams. I need to tell you something about Brandon. Lucy looked up with confused, tear-filled eyes. Who are you? 2 years ago, Brandon destroyed my family. He used a different name then, Brian Palmer, but it was the same man. He targeted my daughter Amanda the same way he was targeting you. Lucy's face went pale. What do you mean? Fake company? Fake love? Fake investment scheme? He convinced us to give him our life savings, then disappeared. My daughter was so devastated she moved across the country and changed her name. She still can't trust anyone. Lucy stared at her. You're saying this has happened before. Your grandmother didn't make any of this up, honey. She saved you from years of heartbreak. What Brandon did to Amanda nearly destroyed her. Your grandmother made sure he couldn't do that to you. Lucy was quiet for a long moment, processing this. Then I approached slowly, my heart breaking with each step. Lucy? She looked up at me with eyes red from crying but with new understanding. How long have you known? Since last Tuesday, I overheard him at his bachelor party talking about how he was going to use you to get to my money. And you didn't think to tell me? I tried. Wednesday at lunch. You said I was jealous and selfish and making it up because I couldn't stand to see you happy. Lucy flinched at her own words being repeated back to her. I said horrible things to you. You said what you needed to say to protect yourself. You loved him, Lucy. Of course you defended him. She was quiet for a long moment, picking at the beading on her dress. How did you get the evidence to arrest him? Carol had documentation from when he scammed her family. The police finally had proof of a pattern. I called her selfish, Lucy whispered. I said she was afraid of being alone. Were you wrong? Carol asked gently. Lucy looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time since the arrest. Yes. She was afraid of me being destroyed. I sat down on Lucy's other side. I was terrified, sweetheart. When I heard him talking about you like you were just a tool to get to my money, when he laughed about how easy you'd be to manipulate because of your father leaving, I wanted to protect you. He really said that? He said you were desperate for approval from father figures, that you'd believe anything he told him because you were so grateful someone chose you. Lucy winced. He wasn't wrong. I was desperate to be chosen. You deserved to be chosen, Lucy, by someone who sees your worth, not your vulnerabilities. We sat in silence for a while, the three of us in that empty church with the afternoon sun slanting through the stained glass windows. Finally, Lucy spoke. What happens now? Now you heal, Carol said. It won't be easy. You'll second-guess every relationship, wonder if people really care about you or just want something from you. But you'll get through it, and you'll be stronger. The trial will be difficult, I said gently. You'll have to testify about the relationship, about how he was manipulating you. I want to testify. If he did this to Amanda, if he was planning to do it to me, he'll do it to someone else. Carol, will you help me understand what to expect? Every step of the way, Carol promised. Lucy stood up slowly, the wedding dress rustling around her. I need to get out of this dress. I need to go home and think about everything. Would you like me to come with you? I asked. Not yet, Grandma. I'm not angry anymore, but I need some time to process all of this. Can we talk tomorrow? Of course. As we walked toward the church exit, Lucy stopped and hugged me tightly. Thank you, she whispered. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand. You have nothing to apologize for. You fell in love with someone who seemed wonderful. That's not a crime. Will you be okay? You've been carrying all of this alone for a week. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in days. I'll be fine. You're safe. That's all that matters to me. Outside the church, Carol and I watched Lucy drive away in her car, still wearing her wedding dress because she'd been too shocked to think about changing. She'll be okay, Carol said. She's strong and she has people who love her. I hope you're right. I am. And Vivian? You did save her. Maybe not the way you planned, but you saved her. As I drove home alone, I thought about the empty house waiting for me, the mother of the bride dress I'd never wear, and the granddaughter who was safe because sometimes love means making the hardest choices. It wasn't the ending any of us had planned, but it was the right ending. And sometimes, that's enough. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters, but I kept my eyes on Lucy as we walked down together. The trial had lasted 3 weeks, and today Brandon Pierce had been sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. "Are you okay?" I asked her as we reached my car. "I'm better than okay," Lucy said, and I could hear the truth in her voice. "I'm free." The past 6 months had been hard on both of us. Lucy had moved back in with me for a while, needing time to rebuild her confidence and figure out who she was without Brandon's influence. There were difficult days when she questioned every conversation, every compliment, wondering what was real and what was manipulation. But she'd also started therapy, joined a support group for fraud victims, and slowly begun to trust herself again. Last month, she'd even gone on a date with a teacher she'd met at the library. Nothing serious, she'd assured me, but it was progress. "Carol texted me this morning," Lucy said as we drove home. "Amanda's thinking about coming to visit." This surprised me. Amanda had remained largely invisible throughout the trial, though Carol had mentioned her daughter was following the case closely. "That's wonderful. How do you feel about meeting her?" "Nervous, but also grateful. If it wasn't for her story, for what happened to her family, Brandon might still be free." We drove in comfortable silence for a while. Lucy had started working again at the marketing firm, and I'd slowly resumed my normal routines. The charity board had welcomed me back with endless questions about the case, but I'd learned to deflect most of them with a simple "Lucy's doing well, and that's what matters." "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you ever regret it?" "The way it happened, I mean, having him arrested at the wedding, in front of everyone?" I'd thought about this question many times over the past months. I regret that you had to go through that humiliation, but do I regret stopping him? Never. I used to think about what would have happened if you hadn't found out. If I'd married him, and he would have drained your accounts within a year. Then he would have left me, probably claiming I was crazy or unstable. I would have lost you, lost everything, and spent years wondering what I'd done wrong. Lucy was quiet for a moment. "You know what the strangest part is? I actually feel sorry for him sometimes. Sorry for Brandon. He spent his whole life pretending to be someone else, targeting vulnerable people, never forming real connections. What kind of existence is that?" The maturity in her voice amazed me. 6 months ago, Lucy had been a young woman desperate for love and approval. The woman sitting beside me now understood herself in ways that would serve her for the rest of her life. That evening, Lucy cooked dinner for us, something she'd started doing as a way of reclaiming her sense of home and family. As we sat at the kitchen table where she'd once accused me of trying to sabotage her happiness, she reached across and took my hand. "I never properly thanked you," she said. "You don't need to thank me for loving you. I need to thank you for being brave enough to risk my hatred to save my life. Not every grandmother would have done that. Any grandmother who truly loved her granddaughter would have done exactly the same thing." Lucy smiled. "You know what I've realized? All those years I thought I was looking for someone to choose me, but I already had someone who chose me every single day, from the time I was 10 years old. Oh, sweetheart. You chose me when my father couldn't. You chose me when I was angry and difficult. You chose me even when it meant I might never forgive you. That's what real love looks like." Outside, the sun was setting over the garden where Lucy and I had spent countless afternoons when she was growing up. The same garden where she'd brought Brandon to meet me for the first time, where she'd shown him off like a prize she'd finally won. Now I understood that Lucy had always been the prize. She just needed to learn to see it herself. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "I'm thinking about how proud your mother would be of the woman you've become." Lucy squeezed my hand. "I'm thinking about how lucky I am to be your granddaughter." The kitchen fell quiet except for the sound of the grandfather clock in the hallway, marking time that we now knew was precious. Time we'd almost lost to a man who saw love as a transaction and family as a target. But love had won. Not the fairy tale kind that Lucy had thought she wanted, but the real kind. Messy, complicated, and strong enough to survive the worst storms. And that, I thought as I looked at my granddaughter's face across the table, was worth everything. So, that's my story. I'd love to hear what you think. Would you have done the same thing if you discovered your granddaughter was marrying someone planning to destroy her life? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more stories like mine.